place to wrath. That means don't get angry. Hey, so-and-so said this about you. Don't get mad. It says, give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. The message that came forth this morning was about God came to give you life. Trust God. When you're wrong, trust God. When people say things that are mean about you, that tear down your reputation. Hey, and let me say this too. Do you know when people start talking about you, don't worry, you'll find out. You'll find out. People have this mindset that they can walk around and say bad things about somebody else and they'll never hear that they're saying this. They'll find out. Trust me. If somebody's talking about you, you're going to find out. It'll happen. But the Bible says, as much that is in you is, live at peace with all men. Those who wrong you, those who slander you. For vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So give place to wrath. Don't get angry. You're in God's hands. I was listening to the radio a couple weeks ago. There was a pastor on there. This man was amazing. You wouldn't believe the testimony this guy had. It was incredible. But at the age of 11 years old, he went to a coach's house. He was on the middle school football team or whatever. Coach asked him to come over and help him shred some shrubs or something. Well, that's not what the coach wanted from there. And he molested that 11-year-old boy. Repeatedly. And what it did to that poor boy's mind, it scarred him for life. He got into drugs, alcohol, motorcycle gangs. He was shot. He was stabbed. You wouldn't believe what this man went through. But one day he came to know the love of Jesus. And God healed him of all those scars. And he became a big pastor in Nevada. He was on the radio. He's in this big church, and I can't remember his name, but I listened to this story. I was just soaking it up. Well, he decided one day he was going to tell his whole congregation what had happened to him. Because up to that point, he had never shared it. So he stood before his whole congregation one Sunday morning and told them how at the age of 11, a male coach had molested him. The next day, on the front page of the paper in that city, the headline said, "Mega Pastor admits to homosexual affair." It was on the front page of the paper. Do you know what that must have done to that man? When he was trying to share his hurt, that they would slander him so bad. And he said, it tore me up. He said, I didn't know what to do. He said, I wanted to go down to that paper and shoot the editor. He said, I was so enraged and I was so torn and I was so hurt. He said, I ran to my closet and I began to pray. And he said, God, how do I deal with this? And you know what God told him? Be silent. Let it go. Don't say anything. Don't defend yourself and don't attack them. No defense, no attack. You know what God told him? He said, I've got this. When you're attacked, God's got it. You don't have to attack that. You don't have to defend. So he said, as hard as it was, he said, I had to trust God with this. He said, I didn't say a word. I went to church the next Sunday to preach. I never brought it up. He said, I got there Sunday morning, and there were people there that left the church 20 years ago. He said that the congregation had grown by 30% in 1 week because of that headline. He said people had come to watch him die because the paper insinuated that he had AIDS. So people started coming back because they wanted to see this pastor die. People who had left. He said in 2 weeks the church had doubled. He said the funny thing was they didn't leave when they saw he wasn't going to die. And he said, I never brought up that article. I never brought up any of it. He said, today my church is more than quadrupled. He said, souls are being saved all over the place. He said, because I trusted God and I let it go. When I went into welding supervision in 2003, I was invited in by the manager, and I knew it was a God moment. That door was opened by God. So I had to go in, and I had an interview with the manager of the welding supervision department. This was in 2003. No, it was in 1998. 1998. And as he's going through the interview, he got done, and I asked him, I said, okay, can I ask you a question? He said, sure. I said, is there anything about me coming into this department that concerns you? Because if there is, let's get it squared away now, because I want to make sure that you're okay with this. Because it wasn't his decision for me to come to the department, it was his boss's. You know what he told me? In 1998. He said, yeah, we do have a problem with you, John. I said, really? What's that? He goes, well, everyone in the department, including myself, we have an issue with you being a Christian. Quote unquote. That's a lawsuit right there. Isn't it? And I sat there dumbfounded that in the United States of America, I could be told that we don't want to give you this job because of your faith. I looked at him and I was just dumbfounded, and I said, you know, Jim, I'm a Christian. I said, but I'm coming in this department to be a welding supervisor, not to be an evangelist. I said, anything about my faith that I want to share, I won't share on company time. I'm coming here to work for you. He said, well, you know, we have an issue with this. I said, okay. Well, you just let me know what your decision is. And I got up and I walked out. And I began to pray. You know what God told me? Let it go. No attack, no defense. Leave it alone. Well, I ended up in that department. I got the job. And the boss that told me he had an issue with me being there as a Christian was fired 3 weeks after I got there. And lost his job. There were 2 instigators in that department who made my life so miserable for a year that I left the department because I couldn't take the harassment anymore. You know, at one point, and I'm ashamed to say it, at one point I caught my hands going up to this one guy's head. He had a ponytail. He was standing next to a brick wall, and I was going to grab his head and I was going to slam him into a brick wall. I caught my hands coming up, and I put them down, and I said, oh God, I got to get out of this. And I left the department. And I was hurt by all the harassment, you know. I didn't understand it. And I was out of the department for a year, and I was praying about this, and God said the same thing. Let it go. Trust me. I got this. I had to go back to my old dirty, sweaty job on the shop floor while these 2 guys that harassed me were running around making big money and slandering me in every way you can imagine. About 3 years later, something happened that a new boss came in and he wanted me back in the department. And I knew God wanted me back too, even though these 2 guys were still there. So I went back. Not too long after I went back in the department, both those guys got laid off. I ended up sitting at the desk of the main instigator. I had his desk, his phone, his tools, his keys, and he was gone. You can trust God. No attack. No defense.